I think with the sale of F-35 strike fighter jets to Saudi Arabia from the United States, the meeting that took place yesterday in the White House with President Trump and Mohammed bin Salman, the crown prince, and more happening today, I think there is a very acceptable question out there as to what are we selling them? But maybe more importantly, should we be selling to Saudi Arabia? I'm not over what happened on September 11th. That's me speaking. I'm not speaking for you. I'm speaking for myself. Tony Katz. Tony Katz today. Good to be with you. Major Mike Lyons joins me right now. United States Army Major, retired military analyst, does a lot of work with West Point. And I live in the real world. And I was explaining this yesterday on the show that there are a lot of actors I don't want to work with, but that doesn't mean you don't work with them. And I actually think that the time for retribution regarding September 11th has long passed, and it wasn't done as I see it properly then. But I'm here now. And Saudi Arabia as ally, an agreement on the Abraham Accords, and pushing Iran and the Iranian regime further and further into disbanding and nothingness and falling away, creating a better Iran and a better future for the Middle East, that's what's on the table. But let's start where we start. These F-35s, what can you tell us about them, Major Lyons, and how do we feel about them going to Saudi Arabia?
Well, Tony, I think clearly we have to always remember what happened on September 11th and go from there. But this is a different Saudi Arabia. This is a different country right now with a different leader. And now is the time to strike this deal with Saudi Arabia in order to gain this additional leverage over Iran and to really start to set forward a new path for the Middle East. So what we know about the deal, it looks like Saudi Arabia has requested 48 F-35s to go along with 300 main battle tanks, Abrams battle tanks. So it's not only air power, it's going to be ground power. This is Trump leverage at play, visible leverage right out there, aligning with a country that had not had this level of firepower before. Let's talk about the F-35 real quick. We'll talk more about it, but this is not just a plane. This is an ecosystem, and this is a next generation fighter that will definitely tip the power balance in the Middle East towards Saudi Arabia.
You know, the F-35 has been a big part of conversation because not only is it this incredible bit of hardware, this was built with a lot of NATO partners at play, including Turkey. And then Turkey turned around and purchased the Su-400 missile defense system, which is a Russian defense system, which bills itself as an F-35 killer. And this is a real problem. But keeping it on Saudi Arabia, just quickly, you brought up the Abrams tanks. Saudi Arabia can't roll tanks into a place like Iran. For what purpose do they need Abrams tanks?
Well, I think they're always concerned about their borders, Iraq, perhaps in the southern portion with Yemen there. But they project power. There's no question that 300 Abrams tanks, it's about a division's worth of that kind of hardware, would make Saudi Arabia virtually innocuous to any kind of attack that would come on the ground. They have a big playground. They have a big place and sandbox out there to train and practice on those. So they want to get that because it's the most advanced land-based projection of power that's in the world right now. There's nothing in the world that can defeat that Abrams tank. So I think I like the deal. I like the fact that American hardware will go towards that. And what it's going to provide is interoperability. So should it happen, we never thought we'd have a Desert Storm or go back to Saudi Arabia like we did in the 90s and in the early part of this century. But if we did, we now have interoperability with U.S. systems, both on the F-35s and the Abrams tanks. So I think I'm crazy about this deal. I think it's a great thing.
Talking to Major Mike Lyons, retired United States Army military analyst. You're crazy about the deal. So you're a yes, but a lot of people are asking, should we be selling jets to Saudi Arabia? You started by saying this is a different Saudi Arabia. Walk me through your thinking.
Well, we're selling fighter jets, obviously, but the interoperability of these jets are more than that. As they fly, they collect data. They can provide data to us, to the United States, as we fly in that region as well. They're meshed in communications networks, and I think that they'll provide a moving intel post that we're always looking for on the ground, let's say, and that we've had to move out and about the past few years. I think that, again, they will be used as a deterrent and leverage. We'll go back to Trump. It's all about leverage with him. And in this case, it's showing that leverage over the Iranians. Iran does not have a partner that's going to provide this level of military hardware to them that goes against it. So from a way to preserve the peace and to project power in the Middle East, there's just no better platforms than these two on the ground and in the air.
You talk about projecting power and peace. This move, because a lot of this, hey, you were helpful with some things regarding Iran. Of course, Saudi Arabia wants Iran off the board there. They want to be the hegemonic power in the area. Trump saying we can make that kind of happen, but you need to sign the Abraham Accords. We need to change fundamentally. And then they had a little bit of a back and forth at the White House in the Oval yesterday, where Mohammed bin Salman said we need a two-state solution, and President Trump definitely backed off the idea of it being a two-state solution. And getting some of these other nations involved in the rebuild of Gaza doesn't mean a two-state solution in the slightest, but this is all in a larger sense about Trump realigning the Middle East. It starts with the Abraham Accords, and it's here now. What is the realignment goal if you were to describe it?
Well, the realignment goal is more towards economic advancement of these countries that had been led by leaders that didn't really care about its people. You project capitalism on Syria, and again, think about the fact the Syrian leaders in the White House last week, unthinkable 10 or 15 years ago, and now look where that's gone, and their potential participation in the Abraham Accords. And the same with Saudi Arabia. They can be the hegemonic power within the region. They can be the one that drives business through, given their economic advances. And we know Israel, and Israel just wants peace. Israel's not looking to wage war and advance its borders or anything like that. They want to live in peace and prosperity. So that's this new Middle East that the Trump administration has carved out right now, and it's moving down that path. And sure, there's risks sending military equipment like this to Saudi Arabia, mostly on the software side of it, because again, Saudi Arabia now will pick up intel that perhaps they wouldn't have before, because they don't have that capability. The F-35 is an intel vacuum machine and picks up things as it's flying through the skies. And again, we'll be working alongside with U.S. forces in the area there as well. So there's some risk when it comes to this, when the leader's perspective. But given the relationship that Trump has established with MBS, and given where Saudi Arabia is right now, this is the time to strike when the fire is hot.
You brought up Syria, and it's weird. This is a guy who's a terrorist. I mean, America was the enemy and all that, and now he's here in a suit after the overthrowing of Bashar al-Assad, and he's visiting the White House. And yet this has been greeted with a great amount of applause. And so this idea of realigning the Middle East, when people are upset with, this is Saudi Arabia, this is responsible for September 11th, this is responsible for the murder of Jamal Khashoggi, and I'm not saying no to any of those things. It is about dealing with the world as it is, not as you may want it to be. And President Trump, I would argue, does that very, very well. The reception that the new Syrian leadership has gotten, what is that? How has that been seen on the world stage?
I think it's been seen positive, but you've described realpolitik exactly how it is, and that's the United States and this administration looks at the world as the way it is, and not previous administrations trying to project the way they want it to be. They want to tell other countries how they can talk to their employees. They want to tell other countries about human rights violations and the like. And that's not to say that we can't keep that in mind, but we have to look at the world and where it is. So what do we want? Do we want the Russians back inside of Syria? Do you want a submarine base at Tartus, having them have a foothold in the Mediterranean? We've not only is this is going to project power over Iran, but it will put Russia out of the Middle East as well, lock them out completely. Something that the Obama administration allowed them back in. John Kerry allows them back in when Obama refuses to go after them when they cross the multiple red lines with chemical weapons. So this is realigning the Middle East towards U.S. interests as an oversight, as an over control. Let's say the umbrella for control, but returning power to the people in the region as to our alliances to make sure that we get what we want to get.
Talking to Major Mike Lyons, retired United States Army military analyst. With Trump, as in so many things, it is about the dollars, and this investment into Gaza is about a return, and it is about a guarantee in some levels of safety. First off, you have trade partners; you're not likely to attack them. That's very Milton Friedman in its concept, but it's also highly accurate. I would argue. Hayek would I would assume agree with that. Maybe I've misread the man. But the follow up here is, who are we dealing with still as the enemies? And this is, of course, Iran. You take out Natanz, you take out Isfahan, you take out Fordow, these nuclear facilities. You've engaged massive sanctions on the nation, so desperate that they're now trying to capture and have captured at least one oil tanker through the Straits of Hormuz that was Marshall Islands flagged. Mm-hmm. We still think of Iran as the threat in the region?
Well, we do from their capability perspective and their level of intelligence. I mean, their culture. They have the wherewithal to create the environment that would potentially threaten Israel again. And what's happened to Iran in the past 2 years and 3 years since really October 7th, when Hamas made that tremendous mistake by attacking Israel the way they attacked, and where we are today, and how the entire proxy military for the Iranians has been destroyed, and Iran is so exposed right now, and the fact that we did take out their nuclear capability, set that back. The genie's out of the bottle on that. That's not to say they won't potentially have this capability, but for right now, for the near term, 5 to 10 years, that's not going to happen. And so I think this is all about these other countries then in the Middle East gaining an advantage over Iran and advancing themselves and making sure that Iran stays in that box, as well as Russia. We don't want the Russians involved with any Middle Eastern activities. And I think that this is also part of that strategy.
So when does this strategy come to fruition? Because it would seem to me that the strategy is only successful when the Ayatollah is gone and the people of Iran say, you know what? We're actually Persia. We're not Iran. We're Persia. And we're Persians. And hey, who wants to engage in trade? Isn't that the moment of success?
Well, likely, sure, from a final perspective. But until then, our foreign policy can be what it was back in the 80s, and that's just containment and making sure. Same with the Soviet Union back during the Cold War. It's just containment, making sure that the Iranians are not partnering with, let's say, the North Koreans and taking their nuclear capability, some of their missile capability. Making sure that Iran is not an exporter of terrorism and state sponsoring groups and proxy armies that exist that once existed inside of Syria and Iraq, and having them attack Israel. I mean, the downside right now of Gaza is we haven't seen Turkey or Indonesia, these countries that promised to step up in order to provide some level of structure for security. They haven't been involved, nor have the Egyptians. I still believe that Egypt is the indispensable partner here in this to make it work. But until Hamas is completely obliterated, which they don't seem to be, they still control some ministries, they still control some arms, and until those other Middle Eastern countries get involved, that mission's not moving forward. Trump got the hostages out, and that's kind of it for right now. But that ceasefire is still hanging on a thread.
It's a big it. It's a big it. Before I let you go, you brought up Russia, and I don't think anything anywhere involving the military doesn't involve a conversation about China. Is this move solely about keeping the Russian influence out of the Middle East? And how big can Russian influence be, considering that they're still in this ever-loving morass with the Ukrainians?
You know, the point about China is really solid, because I think that's the secondary objective with every single foreign policy projection that the Trump administration has done, keeping China out of the Middle East. Trying to do now a deal in Ukraine. I saw a report that's some kind of 28-point plan. I think that's way too much, but to try to settle that situation with the China in the background. And clearly we're projecting power in the Caribbean because we don't want China involvement with Venezuela and the like. So
you see the USS Gerald Ford, the largest aircraft carrier we have in the Caribbean. You see these other assets coming.
Right.
The designation of Maduro as a narco-terrorist organization, these drugs as a way of thwarting China because they have been spending crazy cash in trying to build out South America.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And we're reestablishing our footprint in the southern part of the hemisphere as part of the Monroe Doctrine, and shouldn't surprise anybody. We shouldn't have to send a carrier group to the Caribbean to project power, but this is how this administration talks. This is how they gain leverage, and perhaps Maduro will change his behavior. I don't think so. I think we have to always be careful with regime change. It doesn't always go the way we want it to go. And clearly we have a supply chain issue coming from Colombia with their cocaine, 2,500 metric tons a year. It doesn't come on those speedboats. It comes mostly overland, gets to Mexico, combined with fentanyl, and that's what the Trump administration is trying to fight. But right now, the leverage they're projecting is visible leverage on what's happening right now. And with every secondary mission is to project power against the Chinese to say, don't even think about it.
Major Mike Lyons, retired United States Army military analyst. I appreciate you being with us. More to come. I'm Tony Katz. This is Tony Katz Today.
Thanks, Tony.